Hello, welcome. I'm Eben Jansen. The show is broadcast live between 9 and 10 from Johannesburg in South Africa, Monday to Friday. We also broadcast highlights at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then the following morning at 5 a.m. Today, we look at child abuse and negligence in schools here in South Africa. We also talk to NUMSA after their declaration of war against COSATU, and we get an update from the World Economic Forum at Davos in Switzerland. But first, here are the news headlines. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate will be looking into the killing of a 28-year-old man allegedly by a policeman at Durban Deep in Rudaport. Protesters are refusing to vacate the land after a development company won a court order to evict them from the former mining area. A strike by Labour Union AMCU at Impala, Lonmin and Anglo-American Platinum enters its second day. Platinum companies have welcomed government's offer to mediate in the ongoing dispute. They say AMCU's wage demands are unaffordable and unrealistic. And in sport, World Cup organisers have taken emergency measures to ensure the stadium in Curitiba will be ready in time for the World Cup's kickoff in June. An additional $16 million has been released to builders to speed up construction. Child safety, rape, abuse and neglect are all words that have become all too familiar headlines here in South Africa. Earlier this week, we had a 27-year-old man appearing in court on charges of rape and attempted murder after he allegedly raped and set alight a 9-year-old girl on the Cape Flats. We started 2014 with a case of Baby Al. She has become known in the media, who was allegedly abused by a 20-year-old woman and her boyfriend. Then who can forget the Diepsloot toddler murder cases last year? Now, in our Pretoria studio, we are joined by Vizette Boertes from Child Welfare in Tshwane to give us an insight as to what is happening to children in our country. Vizette, good morning and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Eben, and it's really nice to be here and speak on such an important topic.
Before we go into the general issues, I wanted to ask your reaction about the specific case about neglect in Limpopo, where a 6-year-old boy, a grade 1 learner, drowned in a school's pit latrine. What's your reaction to that kind of thing? And if I can ask you, who carries the blame in that case?
Sure. That is a very complex situation, and there's so many role players that are involved in that whole situation. Firstly, we're working with the Department of Education that's trying their best to reach out to provide services to all of the really schools that are much in need. But also then, in terms of supervision, if a child gets lost or missing out of a classroom situation for hours with no end, and nobody's going to look and find out where this child really is, then I've got some concerns about just what happened in the classroom there. And this is really, an unfortunate incident. I would put it more in the realm of an accidental incident as what I would put it in child abuse necessarily. But, any time when a child dies, we should actually just feel so sad and so really shocked because, if I give you a bag of gold and I tell you to look after it, there's some people that would look after it much better than what they would actually look after their own children. And the fact is that the potential that's in each child, we don't know who's next Nelson Mandela, who's the next president, who's going to do something incredible for humanity.
Yeah.
And when that child dies, all that potential also goes. And that's really critically sad for me.
Vizette, it seems to us in the media that there's an increase in issues of abuse and neglect of children, men raping children, couples abusing and raping children and murder. Is that the case in your experience? And then what is your reaction to that as well?
I think the problem is that child abuse have really become systemic in South African society, and we don't really speak enough about it. The issue with child rape, it's very sensational, but child rape is almost the top of the pyramid of all kinds of child abuse. And invariably, most of the children who actually in the end get raped in these critical situations or even then gets killed, they really are just the apex of this huge problem that we are dealing with. And although I think the media awareness is absolutely essential for that, if we don't follow that up with services and resources to really speak into these situations, we're just going to keep on reporting and reporting and reporting about this abuse, and nothing critical is going to really intervene on that.
You mentioned how important it is, the media's contribution. We had the cases now recently this year, and then the Diepsloot cases last year. Are there more of these types of cases in the work that you do that go unnoticed?
You know what? The sad reality is definitely the most vulnerable children are children that gets completely ignored by the whole of society. Children who are very young, before school-going age, who don't go to an early childhood centre, who's only in the care of their parents, which is a very closed system, especially if there's an abuse relationship between the father or the mother or the partners. Then that creates an isolation bubble where many things can happen to this child and completely goes unnoticed. So unfortunately, we see these children when they die. But there's already, today, if we speak just with each other here, the critical issue in South Africa is that we do think that there's a child rape every 3 minutes. So in this time that we've been speaking, another child has really been critically hurt, not necessarily died. Now, our issue is how do we find these children, and that is where I think society as a whole have a very important role to play, to speak out about abuse. If you're hearing something strange at your neighbor's house, or if you're seeing a child that is just really not looking like a child should be looking, report it. Don't turn a blind eye, because we are dependent on breaking this isolation bubble, and many times the children that die are the children that got trapped in this isolation.
Are we living in a more violent society? And is there a direct link between neglect and then further issues of rape and abuse and murder, for that matter?
Yeah, very interesting statistics on that is that there is about every day 60 cases of child rape reported at police stations across the country, and 13 cases of general abuse that also gets reported. Now, that is a really big problem, because firstly, our police stations, unfortunately, are not always equipped effectively to be able to deal with these situations. And once a report is made, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be follow-up. And when we're working with children, we're talking about a very critical window of opportunity. If there is a report and this child is really hurt or has been hurt, children die quickly, or children are incredibly vulnerable. If there is no follow-up, the risk actually exponentially increases to the child. And I think our society at the moment is just really spiraling out of control in terms of violence towards all people groups and all situations in our country. If we look at labour, if we're looking at service protests, there's a whole culture of violence. And the family is also where that violence many times gets perpetuated. And it's difficult to intervene on a family level.
We've just got some statistics that we've just put up around child homicide and the like. If we target neglect in South Africa as one of the key drivers of this, will we see tangible results in the short term?
I definitely think that this would be very, very important, because if you compare child neglect to, for instance, child rape, rape gets a much higher percentage of coverage of, sensation of concern than what we would say for child neglect. But child neglect is a very, very slippery fish, and it's a very pervasive situation in our country, and it's driven by poverty, it's driven by HIV, it's driven, by legacy issues that we've had about families that don't live and work in the same areas. And what we need to be able to do is to bring community-wide resources to bear into neglect, so that we can look at identifying children much earlier before the situation really escalates, where they potentially hurt and die. Any vulnerable child is a neglected child in some or other way. And we know that vulnerable children are really easy pickings for people with evil intentions. So if we can manage child neglect on a broader scale and look at interventions that really support children and support families where they are when things start to go wrong, we would have a much smaller percentage of children who are actually exposed to serious levels of abuse. And also, child neglect is a comorbid process with all of the other kinds of abuse. So you would hardly find children who are physically abused whose emotional and physical needs are also fully taken care of. So it's like little things that always hook together. It's like a train that forms a snaky road through society.
Fazette Botes, thank you very much for that contribution today. That really puts us in the picture. That's the Program Director of Child Welfare in the capital of South Africa, Tshwane, or Pretoria, as it's known to most of you out in the rest of the continent. Now, the Department of Education in Limpopo has launched an investigation into the death of a 6-year-old boy and grade 1 learner who drowned in a school's pit latrine. Michael Komape of Matlodumela Primary School in Chibeng village outside Polokwane wanted to relieve himself when he met with tragedy. His mother blames the teachers for making children use dilapidated toilets on the school's premises. The incident brings into sharp focus the provision of safe sanitation conditions and safety and security issues in many schools around the country. Now we have the spokesperson of the Department of Education in Limpopo, Puti Seloba. Good morning, sir, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning to you too.
Just give us your reaction and the department's reaction to the drowning of this grade 1 learner in the school's pit latrine there in your province.
Yes, it's a very sad incident. It's very bad. It's regrettable. It's a very touchy situation, and that's why as the department we felt we need to launch investigations, not necessarily trying to look for a Satan or a devil amongst ourselves, trying to say, because we are aware that quite a number of our schools are still using the pit latrines, so that we can draw lessons and enough information that we can use to make sure that this type of incidents doesn't occur in the province. But nonetheless, we must also put it clear on the table that as the department, early last year we took a decision that by 2014 we should have eradicated all pit latrines at our schools.
How many schools in the province still have pit latrines then?
At the moment, in terms of the database that we have, to be very exact, we have 868 schools that we are implementing proper sanitation, water and sanitation, and we have put aside an amount of 718 million, and this program is going on successfully. Unfortunately, we had this type of an accident in the middle of the implementation. As we are talking now, we have quite surpassed 50% in terms of the implementation. We are also again consolidating the list that we are having. And it's very great that we should emphasize that as government, we also came together around this incident and try to map up and fast-track the entire implementation.
Just give us the official version here. If I'm a parent and I send my child to school, who takes responsibility for the safety of my child at school?
Our approach as government is that education is a societal matter. That is why we have got school governing bodies, parent component represented, teachers represented. So we also have, during the day, our understanding is that the kids are under the safe custody of the teachers.
Tell us about your investigation and how this investigation will proceed into this specific matter. And then who do you believe should take overall responsibility in this case?
At the moment, as the department, as professionals, we don't want to be very excited in terms of jumping into conclusions. We want to deal and handle this program process in a very professional manner. We might have our own suspicions, but we believe that some people who are better professionals who will understand issues, mind you, primary on the investigations is the whole issue of school security, is the whole role that parents are supposed to play or are playing, is the whole roles and responsibility of our teachers. You need to understand that there are certain things when we talk about the quality of learning and teaching at our schools that we also need to look at. So we don't want to jump into conclusion. That is why we are saying we're not looking for a Satan or a devil amongst ourselves. We are looking at coming with a solution that will assist both government and the communities in terms of education at our schools, particularly our rural schools that do not have a proper infrastructure.
What kind of support are you giving to the mother and the family of Michael Komape in this case?
Yes, since the incident happened, we brought in social workers and psychologists to the school, to the family. We have also been holding each other's hand with the family, entirely assisting them in everything related to the burial on which is taking place on Sunday. We also have the Deputy Minister of Human Settlement who will be arriving this afternoon to visit the family, the school and the family this afternoon. So we as government have been trying our level best to ensure that the family is not overstretched by this incident, trying to comfort them, trying to also ensure that financially they're not overexploited.
Thank you very much for joining us today. That's a spokesperson of the Department of Education in Limpopo, Puti Seloba. And just to recap, pupils at a Limpopo school are still in mourning after the death of a 6-year-old who fell and drowned in a pit latrine. Michael Komape fell into the dilapidated pit toilet after the seat apparently collapsed. Today, construction workers descended on the school, laying the foundation for a new block of toilets. The school yard is also being cleared of the tall grass by workers and parents. The Department of Education has set itself a deadline of 2015 to address the problem of ablution facilities at schools. Yesterday, angry parents demolished the collapsing structures. And we'll keep you updated as to how things develop in that province. But let's take a quick look at what you are thinking about on social media. First comment comes from Dashes, who says, with multitudes like that, AMCU means business, and it's just a matter of time before NUMSA close shop. That's, of course, talking about the ongoing strikes in the platinum sector here in South Africa. But Demos says the question, is the NUMSA and COSATU meeting of trying to convince each other going ahead today or not? That is the million-dollar question. Hopefully, after the break, we'll be able to answer that when we have a representative from NUMSA join us. Julius Akaba says, NUMSA to become a political party? Just wondering. Well, moves for a Labour Party under the guise, one would think, of Zwelinzima Vavi are afoot. Keith Mohammed says, the minds created AMCU to break up NUMSA. Their baby has come back to bite them. Where have we seen that before? That is a very smart observation there from Keith Mohammed. Yes, some would argue that point. David Rack says, I think 12,500 Rand is reasonable considering millions of mine bosses take home in bonuses. Strike on AMCU, he says. That, of course, is the cost. Mpumelelo Nkosi. AMCU is very radical. However, such behavior will cost us investors. The Rand closed just over 11 to the dollar. We need proactive ways. That is the voice of reason. And Mpoyame says the Matunjwa guy from AMCU is robbing people blind. Hope the members wake up and see Matunjwa for what he is. Those are just some of your ideas and comments coming in. Keep it coming. We love it. At SABC Newsroom. That's where we live on Twitter. Send us your comments, pictures, videos. If it's good, we'll put it up. sabc.co.za/news. That's where you get all the other stuff. After a short break, while we talk to NUMSA and get an update from Davos in Switzerland. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
Get your business online with a T-Biz starter package from Telkom Business. Get up to 2 megabits per second ADSL with 5 gigs soft cap internet data and 5 gigs promo data, free domain registration, free 1 gig storage with email accounts, and free night surfer data and social media data, all for just 249 Rand per month. Call, click, go to a Telkom store.
As the biggest, the most extensive, diverse news organization and the best content provider of choice in Africa, we aim to offer the nation breaking news, continuous content updates, and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are extremely devoted to putting the news in context and providing the nation with the news they want in their own language. We reflect the world to the nation and the nation to itself. This is SABC News. All local, all global, all the time. Exclusive to DSTV.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom on SABC News. National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, is at the center of a row with their mother body, the Congress of the South African Trade Unions, COSATU. Last month, NUMSA took far-reaching decisions to withdraw its contributions to the Congress of South African Trade Unions political fund and not supporting the ANC campaign for the 2014 elections. Last week, they announced that COSATU's charges against Zwelinzima Vavi are a declaration of war against them. NUMSA also called COSATU to break away from the alliance with the ANC. COSATU expected to deal with the NUMSA row during the course of this week after a meeting proposed by COSATU did not take place last week. The issue at the center of this row is the pending disciplinary action against the suspended COSATU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi. In the studio we have NUMSA's National Treasurer, Mpumzi Makungo, who joins us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Lots of last week, this week. You saw what I was reading now. Just tell us quickly about this meeting, why these meetings didn't take place, and what is the latest, really?
Okay. Indeed, it is true that the meeting could not take place last week because as National Leadership of NUMSA, we met only last week, Friday. And it was then an opportunity for us to discuss everything, starting from our Special National Congress till to the letter that we received from the president of COSATU, where they were requesting to have a meeting with us. We wrote to them back and told them that, look, as NUMSA were prepared to meet with themselves, but we need to exchange the agenda. And what we did subsequently to that, we sent them all our special national resolutions so that in between now and the 3rd of February, because we did propose the meeting to be held on the 3rd of February, they must formalize themselves with our resolution. If there are any clarities, then they will be able to pose those clarities on the 3rd of February.
So you are happy for a meeting to sort out all the issues on the 3rd of February. I want to move on, or actually not move on, I want to move back to last week. A very strong worded statement you brought out after the 9 charges were leveled against Zwelinzima Vavi. You came out and you called it a declaration of war against NUMSA. Just explain that statement to us.
I think it's not the first time we've said that, but it may be how we couched it last week. We said as NUMSA before the Congress of COSATU that we are not happy about the policy direction that our own ANC government have taken, and therefore as workers in this country we've got an obligation and the responsibility of us maintaining the legacy and the trade union movement in this country. We have seen a number of policies that our own ANC government have introduced. We are not happy about them, and those have got a direct implication to us as workers and to the society. We have taken those resolutions and we expect the federation leadership, including all workers, all leadership of affiliates, to make sure that they rally against those particular resolutions. It can't be at the moment, on the eve of the election, we choose which resolutions should be implemented. And therefore, to us, we are declaring a war that we shall not allow in this country neoliberal policies that have got a direct impact to us as workers, and we sit down and become the voting voters. We shall not allow that to happen.
Very strong words from your part. Does that mean that the relationship between NUMSA and COSATU has reached the point of no return and there's no real chance of a reconciliation?
No, look, the core resolution, the resolution is simple. One, it says that we must go as NUMSA and fight with COSATU and make sure that we move away from the alliance. That's the first resolution. The second one says we've got a duty and a responsibility of engaging within the federation. But when we engage and we realize that we can't do anything, we ought to move away and form a new federation. But that's not the first starting point. The issue is that we shall make sure that we fight for the existence of the federation. In between, we'll be communicating with our structures and then take a particular direction. At what stage, at what time it is relevant for us to form a federation. That is the decision of metal workers.
I've spoken to some labor analysts and some critics in the week about these issues, and one of the points that they raised was that they get a sense that personal agendas and careers are being put ahead of the interests of the workers, and all of this is just smoke and mirrors the resolutions that are being put forward. What do you say to those critics?
I totally disagree with them. For an example, as workers and as federation, we said we don't want youth wage subsidy. You will recall at some point, Democratic Alliance took a march against us in terms of us being firm that we don't want youth wage subsidy. Later, the Treasury Department then introduced a document without following protocols in terms of the constitution and the network processes. They introduced what we called employment incentive tax bill. The president of the country unilaterally signed that without following protocols. Therefore, we can't be treated as the COSATU as junior partners when it comes to key decision makers. We don't want labor brokers. Instead of them banning labor brokers, they decided to regulate. On whose mandate is that? We don't want e-tolls. Everybody in Gauteng around the country rally that we don't want e-tolls. The government of Gauteng and the president continue to sign on the 3rd of November. And therefore, on whose interest these policies are being implemented. And therefore, as NUMSA, we have taken a decision that there are a number of, you go to the Treasury Department, we've got a number of challenges that affect the manufacturing in this country. And therefore, we shall not fold our arms and not take those challenges that confront metal workers, including the society at large.
Now, on Twitter, you saw earlier, a lot of people are asking the question, not just on Twitter, but in the media and so forth. People want to know, is NUMSA going to go it alone? Are we going to see a Labour Party being established before the end of this year under the leadership of Zwelinzima Vavi?
No, not at all. Zwelinzima Vavi will remain the General Secretary of COSATU. And as NUMSA, we've taken a decision that we shall not chase away any worker in this country who is having a challenge. We've got the duty and the responsibility of making sure we work with all workers in this country when they are facing challenges, because we believe that we are a forest for the working class in this particular country.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. That puts us in the picture. We've waited a long time to speak to NUMSA, and finally you've come. I understand that you've had lots of meetings and things to sort out this week. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
That's the NUMSA Treasury General Mpumzi Makungo giving us a little bit of an insight as to how the next couple of weeks will unfold in this continuing spat between NUMSA and mother body COSATU, which will have a wider effect on, of course, the tripartite alliance with the ANC here in South Africa. Moving on, the annual 44th World Economics Forum is underway in the Swiss town of Davos to discuss issues facing the global economy. A contingent of no less than 7 ministers, including the finance minister in South Africa, Pravin Gordhan, and a large number of prominent business people will sell South Africa to international investors at the conference. South Africa is ranked 53rd out of 148 countries in the 2013-14 Global Competitiveness Report. This was compiled by the World Economic Forum. The country has overtaken Brazil in competitiveness, pushing it into second place amongst the BRIC nations. Mbongeni Mutwa joins us on the line from the skiing resort of Davos. Good morning, Mbongeni. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
Mbongeni, just tell us what's come out so far. Is the mood really positive around the state of the global economy?
Well, there's a big debate raging around that at the moment. People, I can say, are divided. there are those who are optimistic, especially about the recent developments around the European economy, that it's no longer contracting in Europe. Like for the first time in the past 5 years, Europe or European countries, most of the economies did not contract, but they stagnated. That is seen as a turning point, and there's even projections that Europe will grow by 1.5% this year. Of course, some people are saying here that, you know what, there's neither here nor there. 1.5% is nothing, and also they don't believe that it's sustainable. They believe that it's just a cyclical bump. But of course, our ministers here are quite positive about what's happening around Europe, because Europe remains our biggest trading partner. And when it was contracting, we bore the brunt when our exports to Europe actually shrunk severely. So if Europe is going through a turning point, it means that South Africa may benefit, even if it's in a small way.
Bongeni, I'm sure that the one buzzword or the one word on everyone's lips is unemployment. And I'm sure this must be on the agenda of most of the world leaders at the summit. How have they come up with a plan yet, or are they going to come up with a plan to tackle the problem of unemployment?
Unemployment is a big problem. It's been a big problem in the world since the global recession about 5-6 years ago. Of course, in a conference like this, which is really a talk shop, it's unlikely that any concrete plans or a plan of action will emerge around this. But of course, everyone is concerned about it. They're talking about it. Of course, also in Europe, it's a big issue at the moment, especially with unemployment. So, on the agenda is just people are analyzing what's going on at the moment, the socio-economic conditions that are prevailing, what's causing it, the role of technology or technological advancements in the whole picture, because technology is playing a big role in changing the way that people produce goods and so on, and that's got an impact on jobs. So those are things that are being discussed, but don't look out for any tangible plans to come out around it.
Mungeni, at the start of the 21st century now, the gap between the rich and the poor is as wide as it's ever been all around the world, whether you're in the developing world or in the so-called first world. Will that also be one of the points of discussion?
Actually, that's one of the elements of the theme of this year's conference, the widening gap between rich and poor, and of course also the role of technology again, or what is called the technological divide. Technology is playing a big role these days in how people conduct business, how people live their daily lives, and there is still a lot of people who don't have access to technology in the world, and that's fueling the gap as well. So it's a new development that people here, the leaders, the politicians, and the business people are beginning to pay attention to say, while technology is good in terms of improving all our lives. In fact, there's even a study that was revealed or unveiled here that says by the end of this year, internet traffic on mobile phones will overtake internet traffic that happens on PCs. So the world is changing, technology is changing things, and people here are trying to get to grips with it in terms of its implications and what the future may look like.
Bongeni, thank you for giving us an update there from Davos in Switzerland, of course, where the 44th World Economics Forum is taking place in the Swiss resort town. Rather, of course, the South African delegation, a very strong South African delegation under the leadership of our Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan is there, and very much on the agenda for them will be wooing international investors. Of course, let's take a quick look at what you're saying on social media. Mozambique says the rand at 5 years an all-time high. We would say all-time low at 11 rand to the dollar. That is indeed the case. You'll see headlines all around SAFM News says, with the rand falling to new record levels, it has emerged that South Africa could soon lose its status as Africa's biggest economy to Nigeria. Well, that will definitely be the case at some point this year. Some would say within a month or so. Tabiso says because of these strikes and unregulated mining in SA, a rand is at 11 to the US dollar. We need strong policies by the government towards this. Simaxi says bloodbath on the South African rand today, and that's about puts it into context. Clement says at Joburg Studio, the rand against the dollar got a huge blow last night, and you know what? Things will get expensive. South African people want to be fed. Julian Knight says as South African currency drops to 11 rand a dollar, foreign tourists flock for a cheap holiday. That's why the visitors can't leave South Africa. Stan says the rand will falter so heavily, foreign investors will invest less, SA's credit rating will drop first quarter, and already it's looking bleak. Stan bringing the bad news. At newsroom.co.za, at newsroom, or at SABC Newsroom rather, that's where we live on Twitter, and sabc.co.za. You see it, /news, that's where you get all the news. After the break, the town of Cradock in the Eastern Cape is 200 years old this week. And we'll close the show with a look at the week's sport with Mnikelo Madala. This is Newsroom on SABC News.
All the latest news from the SABC's online news services on our website. Breaking news and in-depth coverage of everything from business, sports to politics and lifestyle. Catch the top news clips and watch live streaming of major news events on the SABC News YouTube channel whenever. Stay connected on the SABC News Facebook page and have your say on news that matters to you. And for the latest headlines and live updates from our reporters, follow us on Twitter. SABC Digital News, anytime, anywhere.
De Beers has launched its Venetia underground diamond mine in Messina, Limpopo. President Jacob Zuma officiated. He called on the industry to improve the lives of mine workers.
This project is also significant because it demonstrates confidence in South Africa as an investment destination.
African Bank continues to be punished for toxic debt. Well, earlier we spoke to the head of African Bank's retail operations. He insists that the company is not alone and the profit warning is not unique.
So African Bank is not unique.
That's business news, weekdays at 8 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. Time for us to take a quick look at the news headlines. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate will be looking into the killing of a 28-year-old man allegedly by a policeman at Durban Deep in Roodepoort in Gauteng. Protesters are refusing to vacate the land after a development company won a court order to evict them from the former mining area. A strike by Labour Union AMCU at Impala, Lonmin and Anglo-American Platinum Mines enters its second day. The platinum companies have welcomed government's offer to mediate in the ongoing dispute. They say AMCU's wage demands are simply unaffordable and unrealistic. And in sport, World Cup organisers have taken emergency measures to ensure the stadium in Curitiba will be ready in time for football's World Cup tournament that kicks off in June this year. An additional $16 million has been released to builders to speed up construction there. Now, the Karoo town of Cradock in the Eastern Cape is celebrating 200 years of existence. It's one of the oldest towns in the province and the 7th oldest town in South Africa. It has a rich history in the struggle against apartheid and has strong economic significance in the agricultural sector as well as tourism. It's also the home of the Cradock Four: Matthew Guniwe, Sperm Konto, Fort Kalata and Sitelo Matlauli. They were abducted by the apartheid security forces in 1985 and assaulted, killed, and their bodies and the vehicle in which they were traveling burnt. Thousands of Cradock residents, both young and old, are scheduled to hold street parades in celebration of the town's anniversary. Now, to talk about the celebrations, we are joined by Abongile Dumako, who will talk to the mayor of Cradock. Good morning.
Good morning, Eben, and of course, welcome to the sizzling hot Cradock in the Eastern Cape. We're actually sitting at 33 degrees Celsius just this morning, but that doesn't harm nor cause any sort of disappointment to the residents and of course the Eastern Cape province in hampering them from their celebrations. Yes, indeed, this part of town is rich in history, and of course we understand that there's Cradock 4, and also it boosts itself with a lot of tourism. That is actually the main source of revenue within this region. And of course, I'm honored here with me this morning, Eben, to be standing with the mayor of Inqobayathemba municipality, which also includes this 200 years old town that is now Cradock. Her name is Nyameka Goniwe. If I may also highlight the fact that she's actually a wife of one of the members of the Cradock 4, which is now Matthew Goniwe. She joins us live here from Cradock. Ma'am, good morning to you and thank you so much for your time. Now, you are a mayor of this 200 years old town. Just how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel privileged to be the mayor of this iconic town, which is steeped in history. It is rich in its own history.
Okay, with regards to, as I was saying earlier on, tourism being your main sort of focal point in terms of revenue, and of course agriculture, I also understand that this is predominantly a farm area. What are some of the projects that are in place, in terms of trying to the point that you keep up the good standard, if I may say, that you have set for yourselves in making it a point that revenue, keeps piling up in this part of the world?
As you know that this town boasts a number of guest houses and hotel, and it is a vibrant tourism town. It has its own iconic attraction and historical attractions that bring tourism to this town, and of course it has its own festivals. This is the way Cradock is attracting people to come and enjoy its own hospitality. The festivals like the canoe marathon, the food festival, the writers festivals. So by so doing, and also there are, we are blessed here because we have the best facilities, big sporting facilities, halls, and so many people come, or rugby schools and rugby unions are using our facilities.
And then yesterday, as we were driving around this area, we actually came across a number of people who, some of them are not really happy in terms of what is happening in as far as service delivery is concerned and other basic needs, as you may say. Now, with regards to that, what is it that you'd like to say to these communities here that are sort of not as happy in as far as service delivery is concerned?
Look, one of the biggest challenge of Cradock is unemployment. It's quite a number of people are unemployed, especially our young people, mainly because there are few job opportunities. This is a small town. We were hoping, there's a huge project that Cradock is supposed to be hosting, or is targeted to be earmarked to be hosting, and it is the sugar beet, the biofuel project. It is a strategic national project that the government felt that it should be hosted by Cradock. It has taken quite a longish time to be able to be established. By its own establishment, we were hoping that by now it would be offering people a lot of employment. I know that if it can be realized, that kind of a project, because it's huge and it can change the face of Cradock and revitalize the economy of this area.
Thank you so much, Mo. Thank you so much for your time. Well, Evan, with that, you've heard from the mayor herself. It's back to you in studio in Johannesburg.
Thank you, Abongle Dumako, giving us an update there on the 200th anniversary celebrations of the town of Cradock there in the Eastern Cape. We close today by taking a look at the week that was and will be in sport with Sports Live producer Nikelo Madala. Good morning, Nick.
Morning, Eben.
Next, tennis, as always. Big game on now. Roger Federer shortly against Nadal. Well, how do you see that one?
Well, I mean, the heart tells me Federer, but form will tell you that Nadal's going to cruise it based on past matches between the two.
But for Federer, it looks like he's playing a little bit better this year. He's playing with a bigger racket. It looks like he gets a little bit more pace off the ground. You're giving him no chance.
No, look, he's a good player, but I just... In the last match, he seemed to go back into his shell and play against Murray. And Murray he looked like he was crippled at some point. But Federer, I mean, was very conservative. He couldn't put it away.
Yeah, I think maybe it was just sort of running him down. The good news for us, those who are not the men's tennis playing out there, the good news for South Africa's Raven Klaasen, although the Americans have claimed him, Raven Klaasen is in the final of the Australian Open.
That's very good. I think it's probably our first final at the Australian. He plays just before the ladies' final, so that's one to look forward to tomorrow.
And then I think the guy that's probably the form player on the planet at the moment, Stan Wawrinka, another Swiss guy. Does he have it in him to step up to the elite group of the Murrays and the Djokovic? And does he have it in him to do that now? He's played well for 6-7 months now.
Look, he's put a few good players away at the Australian Open. So I think, on current form, he's certainly got it. And it would be nice to see him against Federer in the final, an all-Swiss final.
And they're very good mates also. There we have pictures of his victory against Thomas Berdych in the semi-final. They're good mates, Stan Wawrinka and Roger Federer. It would be a dream matchup, I think, for the Swiss. But I think, Rafael Nadal will have something to say. That, of course, is just some pictures from the doubles. Raven Klaasen and Butora, the American partner, that has now claimed his nationality. Those are some of the pictures. But let's move on and come back to South Africa next. Minister Razzmatazz, the man on everyone's lips, all over social media this week, giving it to Bafana. Some people say he's right. Say, yes, Minister Razzmatazz is right to cane them. They're losers. But what's your opinion?
I think he was fair to say that they didn't represent us well. I'm just not sure that it was fair to single players out. He was very harsh on Munip, for one. And we know that people do make mistakes, but I think to call him out personally and say he was the cause of our downfall, I don't know if that's fair. There's lots of news coming out of Cape Town regarding the Bafana camp, but I think I'll sit on it for now.
Are you being conservative this morning, Nikelo? It's the first time it's ever happened in South African history that someone in such a high office, the sports minister, comes out and publicly lambastes a team for their performance, absolutely ripping them to shreds and then calling out individual players.
Like I'm saying.
Nothing further to report. Come on, man.
Look, I don't know what informed his tirade, but there are rumors coming out of Cape Town, unconfirmed rumors that there were talks of a player revolt being instigated by certain members of the team.
Over money?
We don't know that. It's not confirmed, but there are murmurs coming out of Cape Town. And I think we'll find out after this weekend. Okay, and Vilile is on that story because he was there. Vilile Mbule is one of our sports reporters. The guy's won a few awards. He's been in Cape Town on this. So watch this space. We're going to see if the boys were greedy once again and asked for money before this game. If they did, I agree with the minister. I don't know if it was the boys, but someone in the team. Someone in the team might have asked for money. Might have wanted the boys to ask for money. Might have wanted the boys to ask for money. And we love these unconfirmed reports, don't we? Nikelo Madala putting us, of course, in our place. But last night, your beloved Kaizer Chiefs
They won, they're 8 points clear. You must be walking on air this morning.
They're not my team even. They are the people's team, the other people's team.
No, the people's team is Orlando Pirates. Let's get it right. That's
you saw how they fed against old Usu today.
Yeah, no, we have to always make sure that we keep the Zulu nation happy. You know, Orlando Pirates, after all, is a political movement more than a football team.
They were very political last night. A lot of hot air, nothing to show for it.
Your sense of humor is only outdone by your good looks, Nikelo Madala. Yeah, anyhow, there's Kaizer Chiefs going 8 points clear, and deservedly so.
It was a good own goal. It was a very good own goal.
It looks, it looks like it was well paid for. Anyhow, let's move on to that Chan tournament. Is the Chan tournament dead in the water now that Bafana's out?
I think it's been dead in the water from the get. I mean, you've seen the numbers at the stadiums.
Yeah.
The turnout has been dismal, to say the least. I'm not sure, I mean, what the issue is with the local fans, but it wasn't the best spectacle in terms of turnout.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
But it goes on.
And then the hammer blow was South Africa going out when they did. Just some pictures coming in from the Chan tournament. I quite like the fact that Africa's homegrown players get a platform to play on and to be able to showcase to the world that there's more than just a few players that go to.
I think it's a great concept in terms of developing the game on the continent and giving, I mean, the localized players
a chance.
Well,
Nick, thank you for joining us today. As always, unique insight, giving us breaking news there about, once again, some disharmony and disobedience within the Bafana camp. That story is developing. We'll keep you posted, of course, as how it develops. That's Nikelo Madala, who is producer on Sports Live program that is every night at 8:30 on this very channel, of course, 7 days a week, where you get all the sports updates and news from all around the world in one single place. Newsroom was broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. We are on air live every morning between 9 and 10 a.m. with highlights of the show rebroadcast at 2 o'clock every afternoon in the week and 5 a.m. the following morning. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.